Good morning, members. We have already formed a quorum to start our meeting. It is also time to make a start. I would like to welcome everybody to the meeting of the Public Works Subcommittee. For the legislative session 2017-18, as of the last meeting, we have approved 5 items of a value of $7.1606 billion. At today's meeting, on the agenda, we have got 4 discussion items. For items 1 to 3, either they haven't been started or it hasn't been completed in relation to the vetting process. For the 4th item, that's in relation to the Capital Works Reserve Fund block allocations. In 2018-19, they involve a total amount of $13.5128 billion. If all the items get approved, then the cumulative number of approved items will be 9, totaling $20.6734 billion, setting aside $2.674 billion for land resumption and computerization. The total amount of money for the public works projects would be $17.9694 billion. Just want to remind members that if you have direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to the discussion items at today's agenda, please, in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedures, disclose the nature of the relevant interest before you speak. Please also pay attention to the provisions concerning voting for matters that you have direct pecuniary interest in Rule 84 of the Rules of Procedures. Item 1, Head 711, Housing, X6XTH, Road Improvement Works at Mount Shan, Sha-Tin. And the this is to invite members to recommend to the FC the upgrading of X6XTH to Cat A at an estimated cost of $587.7 million in money of the day prices. On the 29th of November 2017, we started the discussion of the item, and I would like to open the floor to questions. Public officers who are in attendance have their names on the list. Members who indicated to ask questions last time are not present. Any other members wishing to ask questions, I put the matter to the vote. Anybody in favor, a short hands, please. Dr. Fernando Zheng, the 4th round, 1 minute. Yesterday, we had a meeting of the Welfare Services Panel, and we understand that in the vicinity of this location, we know that we are going to have an impact on the new HOS project. Well, yesterday, at the WSP meeting, a welfare and retail facility will be directly affected. We are talking about the site to the west of Yan-On Estate. So my question is, I want to check with the administration as to whether that particular welfare facility will have its sort of operation affected. I haven't got the timetable. I know that for that welfare facility, we do have a center, or rather home for the aged, as well as a facility for the people with disabilities. I want to know about the possible impact on the residents of such welfare facilities. The time limit has been reached. So be brief. We are not sure about the exact location in Dr. Zheng's question. Can Dr. Zheng tell us about the location of that particular welfare facility? Well, for that particular block, there will be a pedestrian footbridge linking up with the HOS development. I know, Mr. Leung. Well, in fact, we have got 2 car parks on either side. Well, for this welfare block, together with the retail facility, it is part of the extension of Yan-On Estate. Therefore, it will be taken up as part of the Yan-On Estate project. My question was, would that be affected by this project? because we do have the elderly as well as the PWDs staying there. For the details, I would like to defer to Ms. Tam. Ms. Tam, thank you, Chair. This will affect the HOS flats as part of the Yan'an estate expansion, but then the welfare and retail block in phase 1 will not be affected. Just now, mention has been made about a footbridge, providing the connection with the HOS units. Now, should there be a delay in the roadworks, then the footbridge will also be delayed. All right, if there are no other questions from other members, I would like to put the matter to the vote. Those who are in favor, yes, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, if you'd like to speak, please press the button. Second round, 3 minutes. I did press the button, Mr. I did press the button, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm concerned about the commercial vehicle parking spaces. For this particular project, I think you have got a very small number of parking spaces for commercial vehicles, in particular light goods vehicles, maybe just 4 or 5. However, I think you know from the experience in other projects that the lower strata of the community usually need such commercial vehicles to make a living. Now, given the very small number of parking spaces for such vehicles, can you not sort of ask the Transport Department to provide more parking spaces for the light goods vehicles under the planning standards and guidelines? I think the question was raised last time. Yes, could I take up the question? Ms. Tam from the Housing Department, please. Ms. Tam. For light goods vehicle parking spaces, we've been following the Hong Kong PSG. Yes, I do know that. But then we do have a number of housing estates nearby. I want to know whether there is an excess demand or an excess supply. Do you need to make use of this development project so as to over-provide such parking spaces so as to meet the demand? Ms. Tam. Well, as to the provision of parking spaces, it has been decided upon discussion with the Transport Department. Now, we have housing, we have retail facilities. Within this project, we have been maximizing the land resources here. We haven't got any sort of extra space to add to the number of large goods vehicles parking spaces. Well, I want to clarify one point. Of course, this has been decided in accordance with the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines. But then, what about the demand in the area? Are you telling us that there is no shortage of parking spaces, and we haven't got the light goods vehicles being parked by the roadside everywhere? I think probably the member is saying that according to the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines, the provision is adequate. But what about the reality? If there is a shortage, then perhaps you should think of increasing the number of parking spaces. Mr. Leung. As Ms. Tam has mentioned, we've been following the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines when we decide on the provision of parking spaces. And in fact, we have tried to identify the most appropriate level of provision. Other than this particular project, for the district as a whole, the TD has been watching the situation. Well, the TD will make use of short-term and medium-term measures so as to address the need for parking spaces. For Shan, at Shan Street and another street, more curbside parking spaces have been arranged. And then for Area 73 of Ma On Shan, again, the TD has planned to provide parking spaces within a sports facility to cater for the demand for parking spaces in relation to large goods vehicles. Well, I've noted that at the last meeting, many members were concerned about parking spaces. I can see for myself that the government officers have tried their best to answer the questions, but then the paper is about the road improvement works at Mount Shan is not directly related to the question of parking facilities. But I'm sure the public officers can take a holistic view of the district after the meeting and try to find out about the demand and supply and take this opportunity to increase the number of parking spaces. But it is not directly related to this project. I would like to remind members of that. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, the third time, second round, to be followed by Dr. Kwok Ka-ki. Mr. Chairman, regarding the officer's reply, I think it indicates that the government has failed to face the problem squarely. Now, for Ma On Shan, we have got a number of temporary open-air parking lots. I'm sure we understand that gradually they will be phased out upon the need to take back the sites for long-term development. Now, here you're talking about subsidized housing for sale. If you rigidly adhere to the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines, then at the end of the day, all the temporary parking spaces will disappear so as to give way to housing. And then the vehicles will be parked along the curbside. And it will be trouble for everybody. So my question is, don't you think that it is time for you to relax the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines? Secondly, now this is a public housing development under the housing authority. Don't you think that you have responsibility to make sure that you try your best to meet the demand for parking spaces in the district, so as to make sure that you can release the sites currently used for short-term parking for the purpose of housing? I think that's the approach you should adopt, but then every time you're saying that you have been following the planning standards and guidelines.
Facilities, unless the government requests, of course, is able to accommodate such requests. I hope that the answers can be given in writing afterwards. Who to respond? Mr. Leong? Thank you, Chairman. As for the Hong Kong Planning Standard and Guidelines review, the relevant departments will, according to their needs, to review the details, so they will continue to follow up with the society demands. As for the second question, for the PRH development, the potential parking needs, and for every project, besides taking reference with the HKPSG, and every time depends on the community situation, we discuss with the TD and look into how many and what type of parking space in the projects. So we did a reviews and provided a number of parking spaces as needed. I hope that next time when I get to the Finance Committee, they can provide information for TD on the parking demand in the area. I already reminded the administration, so we can provide the document after the meeting. This is not directly related to this road works. However, for the parking situation of nearby housing estate, I believe this is a concern of members as well. So Mr. Leung can supplement afterwards. Thank you. Next, Mr. Kwok Ka-ki, fifth round, 1 minute. And I hope that the government provide a uniform response on parking spaces. On Monday, we listened to the hearings on the commercial vehicles owners. There are 70,000 vehicles, only 40-some thousand parking spaces. The shortage is quite severe, especially for the grassroots. For example, new housing projects. A lot of the residents there are professional drivers. So the government not only ignore the actual demands, but since they added make the shortage more severe. Last time I asked the housing department, however, he failed to learn from the lesson at Yatsung Estate. Have they looked at the parking space for the new road, especially for disabled, for example, the intellectual impaired and the person with disabilities, that one day pick up, drop off, would there be sufficient parking spaces for them? So I would like Ms. Tam of Housing Department to explain. And from the information papers provided by us, that barrier-free access can be provided to those in need. And in the parking lot, there will be this barrier-free parking spaces. If they taxi access, they can park at the lay-by at the entrance and use the barrier-free access to the elevators and to the facilities. And for the residential blocks, there will be some lay-bys where they can use barrier-free access to enter the blocks. Let me finish the question, otherwise I'll need to press the bell again. And for the Yatsung Estate, whatever you describe as ready features there. However, there's just insufficient spaces. So all the school buses and the shuttles, as well the rehab buses and so on, will need to queue to load and unload, because they keep on pick up and drop up and at their roundabouts, and the wait is just obstructing access. Can you demonstrate through I'll grab photos to see how it works? We can provide after the meeting. I've put forth a question, however, there's still no picture this time. I think we can provide after the meeting. So there's quite some time from the last meeting and still no picture provided. So I believe that Mr. Kwok's concern has been taken note by the colleagues. And I have to remind you that this is not directly related to road improvement works at Mount Shan. I understand the member's concern, so I shall allow questions. However, I hope that the question won't be too repetitive. Can I have the responsible colleague to provide the relevant information? Ms. Tam, so that's been agreed. Dr. Financial Chung, fifth round, 1 minute. So I didn't get a direct response from the answers. As for the welfare and retail facilities, will be affected by this project, as this facility will be built and inside there will be the elderly and disabled. For the whole project, it is very close to Yan-on Estate, and it might affect the residents inside, for example, the elderly, the children. And I hope that during construction, the administration should take note of the health and safety conditions, so as not to create such relevant hazards. So all the safety measures, as well as to dust-proof and noise-proof measures, should be implemented, as been quite close to the residences. The environmental impact of the project have been set out in the document, and the members have raised such concerns. I hope the administration should take note. Mr. Chu Hoi-tik, fifth round, 1 minute. I have two short questions. I'm asking the changes in number of units for these two projects. And I see the document submitted to Town Planning Board in 2014. It has laid out the number of units. And I wonder, have you communicate with the TBB that the two projects will have additional 700 units? Have you communicated that to the TBB? And for the long-term housing strategy, that the mix of private and public housing will be at 40 to 60. And they have 700 additional units, and for the roughly the site of roughly the same site, and some are able to provide 20 more units. So that the ratio of 60% public housing would be exaggerated. I think this question has been raised before. And for the number of units, had to do with the size of the units. For example, let's say we have the smaller units that will let you have more of the overall number of units. So that is something that been mentioned in the LTHS. Let me reiterate that the question should be directly related to road improvement works. For the broader policy questions, according to our rules of procedures, they should be raised in the council meeting or the relevant panel. And the question you have put forth, I'd deal with this flexibly and allow you to put forward. Even though the time exceeded, I shall let the administration make a brief reply again and hope that the members can take note that this question is not directly related to this particular project. And it's concerning the nearby housing estate, there are also the possibilities for the questions. So which representative of administration would like to respond to this question? Mr. Leong. As for the number of units, which shall apply to the town planning board, as well as for the housing ratio of 60-40, and just to accommodate different needs of the general public, we shall configure the ratio as we see fit. So I see you pressed the button again, so you have another question? I've asked this question last time, 1 minute. I would like it to provide further information on the noise per barrier. It just came to spend over 56 million. I've asked question, how do you protect the residents there? So I would like to know more. Now they claim to use two measures to reduce the impact, for example, noise per barrier, as well the paving materials. Can you explain that how much noise can be mitigated? For the noise, I can help Mr. Yip of Housing Department to explain. I don't have the actual data on hand. How could I can provide it to Mr. Kwok after the meeting? So I iterate that after implementing these two measures, we have reduced the noise to the required levels. Please don't treat the question like this. You're asking specifically on these two measures, so you'd like to know the effect of the low noise road servicing and roadside barrier. Talk about how much decibels that you can reduce. I think that Mr. Yip can, HC can provide afterwards. So let me, one more question. Now that you claim to have new sort of road servicing that will reduce the noise, so how much the servicing will cost? This is rather common materials. What's the difference? So we can provide information after the meeting. So it's no more questions, and I'll put it to a vote. Those who support this project, please put up your hand. Nine. Those against? Abstentions? This project is carried over. Would any members require a separate voting for this project in the Finance Committee? None. I'll remind that the administration representatives that the documents as requested in the 2 meetings, please try to have them available, supply them as soon as possible. I just said that ask them to provide the information, so I'm going to request a separate voting unless they can supply the full set of information requested. So this is a conditional. So please provide the document as requested after the meeting as soon as possible. even though they might be directly related to the road improvement works, I believe that the members are concerned that this road used to connect the housing estate and parking spaces and so on. So please provide them as soon as possible. If you have any questions, please communicate with Dr. Kwok and other members as well. Item number 2, 870TH feasibility study on Route 11 between North Lantau and Yuen Long. Document number PWSC 2017-18-23. It was recommended upgrade the project to category according to money of the day prices. The estimated cost to be 87.7 million. And back on March 17. The committee suggested community traffic panel, and the main highlights of the discussion have already been tabled to members. And we have a Deputy Secretary Transport, Mr. Kun Ting Ting, and Principal Assistant Secretary Transport, Mr. Wak Chi Kwang, and Director of Highways, Mr. Chung Kam Wah, a Major Works Management Officer, Mr. Lo Kok Wah, Assistant Commissioner, Mr. Transport of Chen Yi Yun, and Chief Engineer of TD, Mr. Yu Tin Chang. Shan Hang for around 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding Route 11, for the new territories, in particular Tuen Mun and Yuen Long, we have got a growth of population. We do need a new road. Regarding Route 11, I just want to mention that, well, this is supposed to go from Yuen Long and Tuen Mun to the Lantau Island. Well, probably vehicles would either go to the airport and go to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai Macau Bridge. On the other hand, vehicles may take Ching Mao Bridge to go to Kowloon. This is because it is going to run in parallel to Ting Kau Bridge. In other words, if motorists would like to treat this as Ting Kau Bridge, but then I'm afraid they have to pay for the tunnel toll or the bridge, and it is going to cost $30. If you use Ting Kau Bridge, it's free of charge. But if you use the Ching Mao Bridge, it is going to cost you $30. So it will result in a very odd scenario. Motorists have to choose whether to use it or not. For people coming out from Yuen Long, they have to pay $40 or so for Thailand Tunnel. You have to pay for the Ching Mao Bridge again. So I'm afraid the diversion will be sort of rendered ineffective. They may try to take a more indirect route, and as a result, Ching Mao Bridge will become over-congested. So I hope that the study will tell us about the proposed tolls for the Lantau link. And then I don't think you are going to take the traffic to Kowloon by way of an additional route. I'm not sure about the future of this particular road. If you just want to have something running in parallel to Ting Kau Bridge. But then, in future, we have the Tuen Mun Chat Lap Kok link. Again, it is going to run in parallel to Route 11. So I want to know about the intention of having Route 11 and what is the purpose to be served. Of course, I welcome an additional route so as to ease the traffic congestion along Tuen Mun Road and Ting Kau Bridge. Who will take the question? I would like to thank the member for his question. Exactly, because we are aware of the population growth in NWNT, and we need to address the additional traffic demand. Therefore, we want to have a feasibility study. As well as to the scope of the study, it will cover a lot, including the alignment as well as the possible fees and charges to be imposed. But I think we can defer to the TD. Yes, Mr. Chen, Assistant Commissioner. Well, two questions here. First of all, the toll to be charged as to whether it is to be a tolled expressway. This will be part of the feasibility study. And as to the impact of the toll on the Lantau link, I think again this will be considered as well. Well, for Route 11, it has been based on the alignment of the X-Route 10. As to the actual details, again, it will be studied within this exercise. For the southern end, it is going to be connected with North Lantau Highway. As to the urban bound traffic, we have to take everything into account. We need to have a holistic view of the development in Hong Kong. Well, in fact, we're going to have other studies. In particular, for the PD, they are now studying, having the study called Hong Kong 2030 Plus. We'll find out upon commissioning of Route 11 whether there is a need to have an extra road link to traffic to the urban area. Let me sort of comment on his answer. He said that he would also consider the tolls for the for Route 11. I'm just wondering whether you should waive the tolls for Lantau Link. Well, I think all of them will be studied together. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think you're right. Next, Dr. Kwok Ha-Ki. I think it is rather odd. Now, for NWNT, you're trying to take lots of the people. You have housed a lot of people in NWNT, and yet they have problems with traffic. During the peak hours, we have already got a lot of congestion. Just now, it has been said that you would like to plan for 2030. In other words, the road, when completed, will go nowhere. And then you need to build the East Lantau metropolis, and then the route will be justified. So the government has come up with a trick and asked for $80 million to carry out the study. To solve the problems for NWNT, there are two easy solutions. Waive the tolls for Route 3, and then you can provide a direct solution so that NWNT residents can come out more easily. Currently, for the West Rail, it is over-congested. Now you're going to pay hundreds of billions of dollars to build Route 11. I don't think it is logical. It is not justified at all. Now, if you want to provide a rail link so that people can go to the town directly, then I think that would be welcome. However, for what you are planning, it is not going to make sense. So we have got the answer now. You want to have a road so as to prepare for the commissioning of the ELM project. Now, for this particular route, I don't think it will take us anywhere. Now, for NWNT, why don't we go to Kowloon directly? Why would we want to go to Lantau and make a big detour? I've been asking for the traffic volume for the Lantau link. Now, we haven't been given the information. Rather, we have been told that they can tell how much traffic they anticipate along Route 11, but not so for the existing road. Well, I think you are sort of trying to perform magic. Please don't try to deceive us. Don't poo-poo over the eyes of the public. You need to tell the public. I think here you are merely trying to find an excuse. You will simply say that you haven't got any connecting road, and so we need another $500–600 billion to build a ELM, and then you need to spend more money so as to get connected with the western part, that is the Western District. Now, residents in the Western District have told us that they know that everything has been deferred so as to make sure that the ELM will be taken forward. I think the government has resorted to something very sort of bad so as to take this forward. It is a very undesirable arrangement. Ms. Poon. Let me clarify. For Route 11, as we have explained, well, in fact, it has originated from the Route 10. Route 10, if you have decided against imposing a toll on Route 10, it would have been completed. For some reasons, Route 10 has been vetoed, and we have already reported to the electrical concerning the traffic planning for NWNT. We have already said that we need to revisit the topic when there is further development of NWNT. For Route 11, this is to meet the extra traffic demand arising from the growth in population in NWNT. You take people to Lantau, and yet they don't get sufficient transport arrangements on Lantau to go to other places. Dr. Fernando Cheung, indeed, it is mind-boggling. If you talk about NWNT, then I thought we always have a sort of planning philosophy. That is, you would like to have self-contained communities. Now, for the NWNT population growth, I think you should have planned in such a way that they can shop, they can work, they can meet all their daily needs within the same district, instead of asking them to travel to other districts and take long journeys before they can meet their needs, like shopping, cultural needs, recreational needs, employment, welfare, etc. I think the community should have been planned in such a way that it is self-contained. Now, for this particular route, we are going to take people from NWNT to northeast of Lantau. But what are they going to do there? I think in the northwestern part, we have the Tuen Mun Chat Lap Kok link. If you talk about the transportation of goods, if you talk about logistics requirements, this is going to be an important link. And there will be a direct link for vehicles and goods with Tuen Mun, and then you can go to the mainland. And then in the east, you have the Chiang Mai Bridge. For Route 11, it is rather odd. Either you go east and you have to take Chiang Mai Bridge before you can go to Cheng Yi and then the urban area. So are you telling us that you expect a lot of people, a lot of goods to travel from NWNT to Northeast Lantau? But tell us what for? Ms. Poon. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, the member, for his question. Well, even though the Western Bypass is completed, Tuen Mun Road, Ting Khao Bridge, and Tai Lam Tunnel in the 2030s, congestion will still be severe. So there is such a traffic demand that we need to carry out the feasibility study at this stage. Of course, for NWNT, we would like to have more employment opportunities in situ. However, we can't rule out the need that as a result of the population growth and as a result of the economic development there is a demand for land routes to take people to the urban area. While we encourage the use of the rail service, we encourage more employment opportunities within NWNT, we still have to provide the traffic infrastructure. If we see that there is a huge demand to go to the urban area from NWNT, why are we taking people to Lantau? Is Lantau part of the urban area? Now, if they go to Lantau, they take Tsing Mao Bridge and they go to Tsing Yi. I think a better choice would have been Tsing Long Highway or Tuen Mun Road. Now, you say that you want to build a new road so that they will suffer from congestion at another spot, then I can understand. But I don't think you really want to spend billions, tens of billions of dollars to let them get tied up in the traffic congestion. Your time limit has been reached, but Mr. Shan, please give a brief answer. Well, Route 11 originates from Route 10. Either you can get connected with Tuen Mun Road or you can go to North Lantau Highway. So there are two connection points. In year 2007, we gave an account about the external connectivity about NWNT. And we have suggested that we could use Tuen Mun Chat Lap Kok Link, but then it's to the west, and we believe that for NWNT, the development is such that, and as it has been borne out by what we have seen here, the population will be increased by 500,000 from 1.1 to 1.6 million in the year 2036. So we need to provide for more transport infrastructure. Now we need to revisit the topic. And in fact, when we talk about external connectivity, sorry, Mr. Chen, I think you need to keep your answer concise. If you continue to be so clumsy in your answer, you can't answer the question. Now, you are having a feasibility study, right? In your study, are you going to include the following point, that is more connection options, taking people to the urban area instead of just having a point-to-point alignment? So please give a clearer answer. Now you're having a feasibility study. You are not asking us to finalize on the project. So we want to see if the feasibility study is going to include such matters as well.
Just simply put, just while I'm studying for the route, we had reserved a location if necessary, and northeast corner of Lantau would have a direct connection to Tsing Yi. So in our feasibility study, we'll look into the actual demand. If it warrants so, there will be a direct connection to the urban areas. At least a few members feel there is such need. And I feel that since you're building a highway, it shouldn't be a point-to-point one. And I don't think as that most of the traffic would like to think they would like to go to Lantau from the NWNT. There should be some convenient connections to enhance the entire road network. In a sense, for the feasibility study, it would be incorporated such considerations that the members will be well issued. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, first round, 4 minutes. So the contents of the feasibility study, I think we should learn from the lesson of the Tuen Mun Chat Lap Kok Link. For the long term, I think the NWNT development must provide an extra railway system to cope with additional demand. And now for this road network feasibility study did not include, was that because you think those traffic able to connect with the Airport Express or the North Lantau Highway? So for this cross harbor section, like through the West Rail, that you can cross for a dual gauge bridge to Lantau for both road and rail, so that it will connect with Airport Express or the Tongchong line, so that the West Rail can have a possibility of another route, so as to reduce the existing pressure on West Rail. Would you consider including this in your feasibility study? Transport Department, Ms. Pun Ting Ting. This feasibility is on the road network, and with congestion of the West Rail earlier, we have reported to the LegCo that we're adding carriages, and we're aware of that, and we have to add more frequency to carry more passengers, and we have a 2030 plus rail and transport strategic study just to look into the for NWNT, whether do we need another rail network to bring the public to the urban areas. That will be addressed in that particular study. We're all aware we claim to adding 8 carriages from 7 is to cope with the current demand. So just to slightly address the shortage, we're talking about to have tens of thousands of people moving into NWNT. So this traffic demand is bound to be significant. So for the cross harbor section, well, you could give a free hand on how to deal with the land section. For the route probably touches on some point of the West Rail, and when you connect to the Lantau, will also be connect with what's close to the Airport Express, and you will not consider this bridge to have a dual use of rail and cars. And yet, with the new system in place, you need to build a third cross-harbor bridge, or even more complicated, having a coastal railway. Why didn't you include this in your feasibility study? That for a possible connection between Airport Express and the West Rail, so that the road and the rail network should be given more room to grow. Well, thanks for a member's question. We understand where the member's question comes from. So we can say that this is a trunk road study. As for the rail, what you would consider how to take advantage of this cross-harbor access to bring the traffic to urban areas. For the transcending 2030 study, that would take note of that. So why don't you consider it together instead of 2 separate studies? This is a very specific question. So for this feasibility study, will you consider that how do you connect with other mode of transport? Chairman. And for the long-term NWNT development, I think, let me just repeat the question again. You're not asking to put the 2030 plus study into this feasibility study. However, for such an important feasibility study, would you consider devoting some portion into exploring the connections with other mode of transport, so as the alignment of the proposed route would have the best connection and alignment? I could not imagine that this would not be included in the feasibility study, Ms. Poon. I have the Director of Highways to answer this. And for the major infrastructure, we do it in stages. For example, first we start with the strategy that how we implement and meet the preparations. And for this FS, the overall strategy, we already had a position, and that we realized through different projects. So we have a strategic study to look into the future rail and road development of Hong Kong. If that particular development, that the rail component will be incorporated into Route 11, these study findings will be included. If we expand the scope of the feasibility study to cover other districts, that will be no longer a feasibility study itself. I'm rather impatient. I already said that I don't think that in this feasibility study that you can cover all the 20, 30, 30 study. However, this geometry related. When we have such background as reference, and for this feasibility study, that will be more effective and specific. I don't know what's the progress of the other feasibility study. You claim to be unrelated, and you look to every study, and for whatever 2030 asks for, you would just come up with the connections afterwards. So if you agree with me, you can just answer yes instead of being dwelling on this issue. So who would like to answer? Ms. Poon. When performing this feasibility study, we will consider the carrying capacity of the planning of the rail network. So we're embarking on the 2030 plus study. That's two studies can carry on simultaneously, as well as to verify these modeling analysis. So the members concerned will be follow up. That gives us more assurances that is more like a better solution that will be dovetail with the overall planning. So Chairman, please don't speak for them. So if you dovetail with the rail, so I heard it should be a yes. They said no, they would only deal with it at the 2030 plus. And for the two studies, we will hope to get the support from LegCo members to take them forward. And these studies are carried on out at the same time. And our intention to and how to facilitate access from the NWNT residents to the urban areas by rail or by road for the planning and the data, they will all considered comprehensively. So I take that as a yes. And I believe that you cannot put a feasibility study of this major trunk road to treat it by itself. You should need to consider how do you dovetail with others projects. However, I'm not asking you to do other feasibility study on others as well. However, without such information, what would be the basic consideration for your own FS? I wouldn't count that as the time under Mr. Wu Chi-wei. This is a concern of all members. Mr. Holden Chow, 4 minutes. So, in decided to build a Route 11, as claimed in the document, to catered about the new population from the Yunlong Hongshui Kiu and having additional route to urban areas. That I understand the rationale. I'm quite concerned that from the proposals we've seen, that the Qingma Bridge will be the only connection from Lantau to the urban areas. The Development Bureau had clear that Chongqing will have a substantial population increase from 80,000 at present to probably as high as 200,000 in the future, coupled with Yunlong South and Tuen Mun. Even if you have the Route 11, you connect it to North London Highway, and at the end, you still have one single Qingma Bridge to the Hong Kong Island and Kowloon. I'm quite concerned that this Qingma bridge will become a bottleneck, that all the traffic going through the urban areas must pass through Chiang Mai Bridge. Of course, I heard by colleagues who are concerned that would it be concluded with a 2030 plus? Because the 2030 plus covered other areas, which is ELM besides this. So I'm not going to initiate discussion here. So all along, I think that if there is substantial increase in the NT West, taking care of the traffic in the urban areas and relying just on Chiang Mai Bridge is not enough. And now that you have a Route 11, you should consider whether there will be another cross-harbor bridge or tunnel to the urban areas. And here, you didn't any mention or come up with such a proposal. I would like to listen to the departments. That what is the assessment of the future traffic capacity of Chiang Mai Bridge? That how do you evaluate in the background of so much population increase? Would you consider having additional way to urban area instead of just on the Chiang Mai Bridge? Thank you for Member's question. Let's state it in the document. This is a feasibility study. So in our study, we will study the alignment possibilities, and the Director of Highways also said that how can it to be connected to urban areas? The actual alignment must be dealt with in this feasibility study. So whatever you see in the feasibility is just a rough or preliminary alignment concept. The actual alignment would have to be studied.
Mr. Chen. We have this link with the urban area via Lantau and Chengyi. Now for the Transcending 2030 study, we will look at it, and then we'll also try to provide for a connection point if it is justified. Mr. Cha, well, in this case, this feasibility study has to be closely related to the Transcending 2030 study. For you to resolve the problem, you really need to understand that currently there's only one link. In other words, Chiang Mai Bridge, which is the bottleneck. Just now, the public officers have already said that for the 2030 plus study, you may consider having another link. But if you don't put the two together, then I just fail to see how you can justify that. Well, I think you are repeating what has been said by other members. In other words, at least that strategy should be a piece of background information. Otherwise, this feasibility study for Bridge 11 will not be meaningful. You agree? Yes, thank you. Next. Mr. Leung Chi-Chang, everybody is concerned about the construction of Route 11. I understand that at the panel meeting, there was a discussion, and I raised this point. I think the whole thing is just too slow. In 2015, Tuen Mun District Council had discussion. 2016, Yunlong District Council. Now it is 2017, and you come to the LegCo. So it has taken 3 years, and now we are merely talking about the feasibility study, not the construction itself. After the study has been completed, you need to go back to the district councils. I don't think we are going to get it even in 2030. We are getting very anxious. This is because for NWNT, including Yunlong, traffic during the peak hours is indeed very bad. I live there, and I drive my car. I take Yunlong Highway, and then you see that we have long queues of vehicles. When there's an accident, then it will be entirely blocked. Either you take Yunlong Highway or Tuen Mun Highway, and then we have to go to Chiang Mai Bridge. As Holden has said, you need to spend 5 or 6 minutes before you can actually get to the approach road. So you can see that the traffic volume is reaching the capacity of the road. The government is working very slowly. It's taken such a long time to go to the LegCo after consulting the district councils. It's taken 4 years. You are working at a snail's pace. I'm not going to hold you back. I will certainly support your proposal, but it is really very slow on your part to even try to get the money for the feasibility study. Now, for what Mr. Wu Chi-wai has said, for the feasibility study, I know that you have provided a breakdown for us, but I don't think you're going to study the traffic side of the matter. For the TIA, you will only be interested in the marine traffic. Why can't you look at the question of providing a ferry service between Tuen Mun and Lantau, so that in case there is a severe congestion along Tuen Mun Road, they have an alternative route. So you're not going to study the impact of the rail on this project. So, Chair, you're right. They are not going to include a provision for the deployment of technical people here. Well, the engineering, feasibility, and infrastructure study, there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of possibilities. As to the points raised by members, I think the administration should consider that. Well, for the third item, port operations and marine traffic impact and safety study, well, I think A1, engineering, feasibility, and infrastructure study. I'm sure this can cover what you are interested in. Yes, Mr. Chung. For paragraph 12A, 1 and 2, small Roman 1, engineering, feasibility, and infrastructure study. Small Roman 2, alignment option study. So we'll also look at the traffic impacts. Thank you. So, Mr. Leung, such has already been factored in, so you don't need to worry. Dr. Zhang, in the policy address this year, we've already been told that the rail will be the backbone of our public transport. So it is impossible to see that within the study for Route 11, it is going to have nothing to do with the Transcending 2030 study, as well as the philosophy that rail would be adopted as a backbone. They should be related. Mr. Chairman, I can agree, and I can see why you're getting impatient. I don't think we can regard the study as something in a vacuum. You have at least already got the population forecast or projection. When you talk about the alignment options, you need to look at the forecast for future job opportunities. We need to be clear about the focus of our discussion. Maybe just now, members have already talked about the idea of the city center, the town center. Are we on the same page? Are you talking about the ELM? Is that what you've got in mind, or what we understand that is the central district on the Hong Kong Island? Now, in the eyes of the administration, I want to clarify whether the administration has already regarded it as a fact that it has already moved westwards. It will have a very important bearing on our future planning. So I hope the admin would clarify, what do you mean when you talk about going to the urban area, going to the city center, and then we can decide on the connection points of Route 11? Ms. Poon. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member. I think we are on the same page when we talk about the town, the city center. I think we will certainly consider the rail option when we talk about the planning vision and strategy. Mr. Chairman, allow me to say that I'm rather green here. When I was a child, I grew up on the Hong Kong Island. As long as I had to cross the harbor, then I would say that the new territories would not be part of the city center, and Lantau used to be rural. But of course, people on Lantau and Tung Chung would not agree with me. So, will the Lantau be regarded as part of the city center? I think, as Ms. Poon has pointed out, I think just now many members have also referred to the urban area. I think probably they had in mind the conventional concept that is Kowloon Peninsula as well Hong Kong Island. But of course, in future, there may be more people living in Tung Chung, and then there will be more vehicular traffic there. I'm not trying to answer the question on their behalf, but indeed this was discussed, and I just want to make a point here. Ms. Poon, anything to add? Nothing to add. So my understanding is correct. Mr. Chairman, let me clarify this point. For Route 11, I don't think you can justify a connection with Lantau only. Of course, Lantau is not the only connecting point. But somehow, it must be that you have assumed that Lantau will become part of the urban area, and then that's why you have got this in mind. Well, I think the study will be scientific and it will be supported by a lot of data. I'm sure all such factors will be taken into account. Ms. Tanya Chen, 4 minutes. I've been sitting here and listening attentively. The chair has become impatient when Mr. Wu Chi-wai asked the questions, and the chair tried to help. Dr. K.K. Kwok has been right to say that we don't see the justification for Route 11. On the face of it, it appears so. Now, after members have been pressing the administration, we now know that it is for 2030 plus. In fact, it is piecemeal. Now, it is said that this will be taken together with 2030 plus study, and there will be cross-referencing. Well, I think the administration should come clean, and I don't think we can put the matter to the vote at today's meeting. Why don't you do so before the next PWSC meeting? Be honest, be frank with us. Now, for this Route 11, you are having a feasibility study. On the other hand, you are also going to have the 2030 plus study. The administration, perhaps due to a slip of tongue, has said that the administration will also consider having another connection, so probably connected with Qing Yi. In other words, you are going to take people to Chiang Mai Bridge, but that means we are going to Qing Yi. I want to know about the relationship between this project and the reclamation in the central waters. And what about the rail option? And what about a tunnel option? Of course, the main thrust of it is to study the feasibility of Route 11. Just now, members were interested in the connection with the urban area. Road, tunnel, rail, what will be the option? I think you need to be frank with us. Tell us how it is going to be related to the 2030 plus study. Don't adopt a piecemeal approach. Wu Chi-wai and the chair also referred to the West Rail. When you carry out this feasibility study, you need to have a very holistic view. I listened to the discussion. I've read all the papers. In the past, Route 10 was thrown out. In particular, southern section of Route 10 was sort of vetoed. Can you, at the next meeting, tell us exactly about the interaction between Route 11 and the 2030 Plus study? Ms. Poon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Member, for your question. I think we have given an explanation. For Route 11, well, we looked at the traffic demand up to 2036. There is indeed a need for such a route so as to ease the traffic congestion from the new territories. The development parameters for the ELM have not been included when we first considered this project. Mr. Chairman, I think Ms. Poon really had certainly referred to the 2030 Plus study. Now you say that it hasn't been taken into consideration. Which way is it? Maybe I need to say this once again if I haven't made myself clear. For Route 11, well, it is going to be a mega project. We are trying to get money to carry out the feasibility study. And then there will be site investigation, detailed design, construction. At each and every stage, we need to come here to get your approval for funding. It will take us more than 10 years. For Route 11, we hope we can complete the construction before 2036 so as to ease the traffic congestion from NWNT to the urban area. No, they can't go to the urban area. You're only taking people to Lantau. The whole morning we're wondering how people can go to the urban area. Well, I think it has been said that they'll consider other connection options when we study the feasibility. Well, we will consider the feasibility of getting connected with the urban area. But then, as Ms. Poon has said, probably we are talking about 2036 in relation to the completion date, so it is certainly transcending 2030. So for the 2030 Plus study, that will certainly come into play. So it is a positive factor, not negative. As someone representing the engineering sector, I would say that this is a positive factor. Dr. Junius Ho. Basically, I support the feasibility study on Route 11. I also agree that it should be tied in with the 2030 Plus study. Of course, there are certain sort of details that we should consider. It is but right.
The only criticism is that why we need to engage a consultancy, as we already have the whole plan in place for 2030 Plus. We have the Highways Department and the Transport Department and there's a Development Bureau. We have so many directors do either PhD or masters. So we have enough talent. So all the consultancies fees we paid, my reaction was that we already paid all this money, and for what we get, they're quite slow and unsatisfactory results. Take the Central Canal Route, for example, from 1996. Only approved only recently, and even the construction would take a decade or maybe take to 2029, spending tens of billions of dollars. So there's high construction costs already. So they have the price adjustment as well. And so working for the government is such a good deal. You will never lose money. So after we making such provisions at the end that we need to make supplementary funding, I don't mind building such roads. Because we need development and we have more population to expand in new towns, the infrastructure must go first. Route 11 should go ahead. The Western Bypass we talked about for a long time. The only criticism is that the usual malaise is that the government has been too slow and yet spent the most amount of money. And for the 24 million, so it's 12 million every year. So that's like the equivalent of the three directors' salary. You can do a lot of studies on that. It's such a habit that we need to engage a consultancy casually. So after the senior government officials, they would just go to work for consulting instead. Is some sort of a cozy deals between them. I don't want one person's work would be earning a two-person's pay. That's my only concern. Ms. Poon, or Director of Highways, Mr. Chung Kam-wah. When taking forward the mega projects, we usually engage consultancy to help. The reason is that for a project, for a feasibility study like this, require a lot of manpower. Only 30 people. That's not a lot of people. Can you let Mr. Chung reply? At the same time, we have different projects being carried out, and we use government personnel to carry out these studies or take these projects forward. The government departments will need to add a lot more personnel. That's one reason. And for the professional expertise, although, for example, computer systems, which are quite complicated, and for these sorts of work outsourced to work consultants, that will be an effective deployment of resources, as well as to leveraging on the professional expertise that would give us flexibility. Otherwise, the government would need to hire all these sorts of experts. Dr. Mock, 4 minutes. So looking at the map and hearing the comments from my colleagues on whether this road is actually good and connected to urban areas, I thought that it was acceptable to connect it into Lantau. I believe that there's some residents in Chinsui or Hong Shui Q who need to have a convenient way to Lantau. And then I look closely that for the there's already a two-moon lab called Link, and this is connecting the other end of Lantau. So what's the real purpose? The administration claims that is to tie in with the Hong Shui Q new developments, and there's a huge population intake, and there will be a greater demand for another route to the urban areas. Well, urban areas, I think they're referring to Kowloon and Hong Kong Island. So have you considered all other options? Have you asked anyone of the members from public that I'm from Tinshui why I would like to get to Kowloon? I think as nobody would think they wanted just to make a detour to Lantau first. And is there any previous studies that found that there's no other options, but is this the only way? You can see that you're moving the bottleneck to Ching-yi, and that will lead to congestion elsewhere. Have we ever planned or considered better options to deal with this? Ms. Poon, or who else to answer? Director of Highway, Mr. Chung. So looking at the annex, the map, you can see the alignment for the traffic towards Lantau after the Route 11 is completed from Chimun Yuen Long. The residents there will be afforded a choice. So the closer to the southwestern Chun Mun, they can choose to use Route 11 to Lantau instead of using the link which requires some detour. I'm not getting a detour to make it or to the urban areas. For the urban areas, so I mentioned that they were given choices. They can choose the Chetlap link or they can use Route 11. For the urban areas, the options are or will be. So for different areas, if they're coming from Hung Shui Q or the Yuen Long South, they can take Route 11 connecting to Tuen Mun Highway. At Tuen Mun Highway, they have two choices. They can either use Tin Khao Bridge to Kowloon. The Route 11 in the future is to be connected to Lantau. Like I said earlier, in this feasibility study, we'll also look into the northeastern corner of Lantau and having a connection point, and if necessary, there will be another connection to Ching-yi. Is there any traffic demand? The public will then be given two choices. Thank you, Chairman. It is for the Tuen Mun residents or even the Hongshui residents to operate them on two routes into Lantau. I believe that nobody would choose Route 11 if it claims that both in Lantau or even on the airport, it was claimed that after the Chek Lap Kok link, that that were convenient the commuters. However, no one will use Route 11 to take the long route to the airport. You just want to get to the urban areas. If you plan to have a second bridge to Cheng-yi, why don't you do it now instead of waiting for later? So they will only wait till congestion to occur. We will not wait till the next phase, and this feasibility study, we will also look into the demand for a second connection to Ching-yi. Thank you, Chairman. I believe that the annex enclosure one is a rather rough map. For the actual connection, they probably were outlined in the feasibility study and consult this. Let's go. Next, Mr. Chen Chi-chun. Ms. Chen, for first round 4 minutes. Speaking of this Route 11, it has its previous incarnations. I wonder if the members have mentioned that on paragraph 23, by way of background, Route 11 was based on the Route 10 North Lantau to Yunlong Highway. It was 2002. The pro-establishment camp was objecting to this, thus the Route 10 failed to go through. And for 2015, this Route 11 was proposed. So before 1997, the government had conducted feasibility study on Route 10. Back then, the cost was only 17 million. That only doesn't require a separate funding of application. For 2002, it's roughly the same route for applying for the feasibility study. The cost is now 87 million. And for those who obstruct the Route 10 feasibility study, until 20 years on, the costs have gone fourfold. I wonder how many canned food can you buy with the extra money. Though these were different circumstances, a lot of the pro-democratic camp have supported the feasibility study on Route 10. And now that we have this uncertainty for the Lantau Island, so we have reservations and doubts. Do you have any figures that back then for the Route 10, back in 2002 when you asked for funding for the feasibility study, what is the rough cost for Route 10, and compare that to today of Route 11? Will it be cheaper or more expensive? Thank you, Mem's question. On the Route 11, I understand this is a very preliminary stage at the feasibility study, and for the actual cost, it's impossible to tell at such an early stage. And for the former Route 10, can you have the Director of Highways to answer that? And for Route 10, back then we have a very, very rough estimate at about 22.5 billion. As for that was the cost estimate back then. Be careful. The cost estimate back then was 22.5 billion. Like Ms. Poon has said, we're still on this pre-feasibility study stage where the actual estimate we need to confirm it through this FS. Allow me to apply for the 20 billion. That was the prices back then. As well know that for the money of the day estimate, that will be a substantial difference. For the 22 billion, was that the estimate when applying for the funding for a feasibility study? Yes. That estimate was based on a rough estimate of then circumstances. Why did the application was turned down? So how did you get arrived to the 22 billion figure? And now today you claim that you're not able to provide a rough estimate. Who to answer this? Chairman, I could not explain the situation back then. Of course, for this Route 11 FS, we will take reference of the Route 10. I must point out that since so many years have passed, the planning as well as the development parameters were substantially different, such we need to carry a new FS. Chairman, I understand. I made a question. So under what condition constraints you managed to arrive at an estimate? So you actually need to make estimate back then. So why today you're only able to claim to arrive at an estimate after the feasibility study? I'm not saying yes or no, but what arguably only provide an estimate after completing the FS. So what did you done back then that made you able to provide such an estimate? It's probably not that meaningful discussing what happened back in 2002. So for the current, as you see the document, we did set the alignment as well and the portals, and we have to consider the new planning data. And we casually come up with the estimate. I'm not asking whether the 2002 estimate is accurate or not. It's pointless to argue for the 2002 figure. How do you arrive at the figure back in 2002 that before you get on the FS? But you claim that this day you cannot arrive at the estimate after FS. I'm not asking for the exact estimate.
Ms. Poon. Mr. Chairman, if I may supplement some information, my colleagues have told me that back then the feasibility study had been completed. Now we are trying to get the feasibility study done. At that time, the site investigation was also completed, and that's why probably they were able to come up with a estimate about the construction cost. Well, I would like to know, I'm not trying to challenge whether that figure was accurate or not. Dr. K.K. Kwok. Well, we can see that public officers are getting more and more skillful at telling lies. I don't see any difference between this project and that project. In 1997, at that time, we talked about Route 3. Here, we know that for the Tai Lam Tunnel in 2025, the franchise will expire. So the most urgent issue is that upon expiry of the franchise, the toll should be waived so that the majority of the new territories road users, whether they bus passengers or they ride on their own cars, they will be relieved of the burden. Please give an undertaking about that. Secondly, I don't see how you can claim that it is a logical step. It is just irrational. Now, Northwest NT people want to go to the urban area, and yet you're going to build a road to take them to Lantau. This is outrageous. I want to go to the urban area, and yet you force me to go to the Lantau Island. Now I try to find out about the traffic volume of the Lantau link upon completion of Route 11. Please answer this question first. Yes, who will answer this question? Upon completion of the road, member, please repeat your question. Are you kidding? What have you been doing? Now, in 2025, can you waive the tunnel toll for Tai Lam Tunnel so that people can use it? Now, for Route 11, everybody will be taken to the Lantau. So what about the traffic volume along Lantau Link? I think the question is clear. Mr. Chen. Yes, Mr. Chen. I'll try to answer. It has been stated in the paper for Tai Lam Tunnel by 2036, the volume capacity ratio is 1.3. No, I am interested in the Lantau link. Can you undertake that you can waive the toll for Tai Lam Tunnel? Well, for the Lantau link, I haven't got the information with me. Initial assessment shows that in year 2036, with the completion of Route 11, the traffic flow will almost reach the capacity. Well, it is almost reaching the capacity, and yet they're still trying to force all the cars to go on to Lantau. So are you trying to add to the burden? Is it outrageous? I think just now it was said that with Route 11, along the Lantau link, the volume will almost reach the capacity. This is because we're going to get connected with the Lantau link. You know very well that it's going to reach the capacity. You're still taking people there. Why are you not providing a more direct link? This is outrageous. Allow me to explain. Yes, please, Mr. Chen. When we talk about almost reaching the capacity, we are talking about the volume reaching the capacity, but it has not been exceeded. Give us the figures. I've been asking the question for a long time. I've written a letter. Have you read the letter? I need to be fair to them. I've written a letter to them. Why aren't you giving an answer, Ms. Poon? For the information requested by members, well, the answers can be found out in the course of this feasibility study. What we can give a rough estimate is the scenario as outlined in the paper. So as far as the traffic demand is concerned, there is a very clear picture. You're going to spend $80 million. We haven't spent the money. You are trying to treat us as an automatic teller machine, right? No, I'm fair. I've written down my question. Well, with Route 11, we want to know about the picture along the Lantau link. Have you read my question, lady? Well, for Tin Cow Bridge is 1.1. It is exceeding the capacity. Dr. Kwok, please bear with me. Please show some patience. Let me finish. Well, please try as much as possible to answer the questions in his paper. Well, for note 2, under the volume capacity ratio, we have already talked about the fact that under 1, it is fine, and then anything exceeding 1.2, it is getting serious. Well, I think part of your questions can be answered. Please give a written answer. Probably some of them can only be addressed upon completion of the feasibility study, so please state so if that is the case. 4 minutes for Mr. Chu for the first round. Sorry that I have been coming in and out. colleagues have told me that for Route 11, you are going to have it landed in the northern part of Lantau. It has been pointed out to you that people are not interested in going to Lantau. Now, upon our pressing, you have come up with two other ideas. That is, maybe you will have another bridge to go to Qingyi. And then another point is that perhaps under the 2030 plus study, you'll try to tie in with the development of the East Lantau metropolis. So something along the line of the previous idea of Route 10. Can I confirm whether this was the discussion? Yes, we have some of the questions already answered. Mr. Chairman, if you ask for my position, now they are asking for money to complete the feasibility study. Now, this is a feasibility study, so when we talk about possibilities, that is going to Qingyi and then on to urban area, being one of them, and then the other is connection with the ELM. If it is said that both are not to be included, then it is absurd, because for a feasibility study, you need to look at all sorts of possibilities. A few of us have written to the administration, and I want to follow up on the answers given by the administration. Ray Chan asked a question about the figure of $22 billion for Route 10. We would like to know how the figure has been arrived at. Now, Ms. Poon told us that at that time they have already completed the feasibility study, and that's why they were able to come up with a figure. That's the answer I got. However, when Ju gave an answer to one of our questions, you have said that the study for Route 10 had not been completed, and so you were not able to give us the full text. Well, now, if the feasibility study had been completed in year 2002, then the full text must be given to us. You don't need to care whether it's for academic study or for the purpose of referencing. Earlier on, when we had the Green Island link, we asked for it and you were able to give it to us. If you can give us the feasibility study concerning the Green Island link, why can't we get the same for Route 10? Ms. Poon, we will follow this up after the meeting. Thank you. After the meeting. I cannot understand. You have said that the feasibility study has been completed, and now in your letter you say that it hasn't been completed. So which version is the truth? Mr. Chung, for the studies that we have completed, we are able to provide a copy of the report. Mr. Chairman, a short follow-up. Many colleagues have asked why you are not telling us the projected figures for the Lantau link. For the answer given to Jeremy Tam's question on page 2, towards the end of the paragraph, I think it is most unconvincing. Basically, it has been said that for the PWSC paper, it is about Tumun Road and Tingkau Bridge. And so you won't give us the figures for Lantau link. I will give them a bit of time between now and the next PWSC meeting, or before you go to the FC. You need to give us the data concerning the Lantau link. Otherwise, it is impossible for us to have a detailed discussion. I think this question has been raised earlier. That is, we want to find out whether the administration has got any preliminary data arising from your internal studies. Ms. Poon, we've explained in the letter it exactly because we want to look at the details, the portals, the alignments and connections. Therefore, at this stage, we don't have a basis to accede to the request, that is to provide projected traffic volumes. We hope members will support our request so that regarding the performance of say the Lantau link in 2036 can be sort of assessed. Mr. Chen Hempen, second time, 3 minutes. Mr. Chairman, for NWNT, we have got many planned projects being committed. We can see that there is a huge difference. Route 11 is justified. We have to study the proposal and we have to construct the road. However, you have to make it clear to us. Say, for example, for NWNT, I think residents are concerned about the tunnel tolls to be charged. So for you to give us the information, you need to be clear about the toll levels, even assuming that you're going to take back Route 3. If you can give us such information, I think the process will be smooth. Of course, we have always been asking for a rail link between Tuen Wan and then Sha Tin, and then further connection with Lai King. It will in fact go past places like Ching Long Tau, which will be part of Route 11. In future, there will be a rail link crossing the harbor. Are you going to house the rail link in the bridge section of Route 11? Please consider such an idea. Of course, you may not be ready with a lot of data today, and I know that you have to take time to carry out the study. Therefore, we support the funding request. Please also answer the questions posed today. If you have got information, please provide them in advance so that we can consider the proposal.
Separately, for the Route 11, there will be supposed to have a connection to Changyi in Lantau. So it was supposed to run parallel to Qingma Bridge, so that the Stonecutter Bridge will be utilized, so that the proposed link can be used alongside with Stonecutter Bridge. So I noticed it's very pretty rough enclosures, so that's why they would give rise to so many inquiries. Hope you can explain clearly that how big is the scope of this FS. Director of Highways, Mr. Cho. Mr. Chan Hengpen mentioned asked whether the railway can be included in the cross-harbor bridge to Lantau. Like I said, for the 2030 plus study, we will carry it out concurrently, and the findings of both studies will be a look into the findings of the 2030 plus, and if necessary, we can see that how these two can be dovetailed or dealt with. As for Qingyi, from Lantau to Qingyi, this another connection I explained earlier. In this FS, we will also look into for the actual demand, and we will also consider that and go forward if necessary. 4 minutes, Mr. Jeremy Tam. I'm very unsatisfied of the administration response to my questions. I have written to the administration of what sort of questions I was asked, but I still received no answer. So this is the Route 11, and I can provide data on the blue from Tunmun Highway for the Siulam section, for the Samcheng section, for Jingtao section used to be able to provide it. However, when I asked for the Qingma Bridge data, and yet you couldn't come up with any. So what you said is unconvincing. Is key, meaning to say that we need to only come with the estimate after okay, with the connections. You're able to provide data from the roads further away. When I said that with this Route 11 is for the future Eastern Lantau metropolis, you denied it and claimed that it had an actual need. And what happened after completion, that the Qingma Bridge is over, when will go over capacity. Why would you still build it? Why decided to embark on this unless you try to deceive us that this it means for the development of the ELM, then that's the Route 11 is what's for. That's why I'm asking you that based on existing information, will the Qingma Bridge be over capacity? And if so, unless the Route 11 is for ELM, is this for this reason that you refuse to answer my question? Chairman Ms. Poon? We very much would like to know the traffic conditions of the road sections as raised by members. So therefore, we need to engage on this feasibility studies, so we can see that the projections will come up not as favorable. The government will think of ways to resolve this. So you can't say that we are creating problems and ignore it. This is not what we mean. So your predictions, able to provide predictions on this section, that section, and that section. Why couldn't you provide the projection for the Qingma Bridge? Answer me first. Why are you not able to provide the data projection on Qingma Bridge? And yet, Qingma Bridge will be directly connected according to your proposed alignment. And yet, all the other road section you can provide projections. Is that there will be problems that it will be at overcapacity? Our preliminary evaluations more as a general told us the capacity of the Qingma Bridge or the traffic flow very much depends on the alignment of the alignment. Therefore, we're not able to just blow it up. How do you explain that you're able to, that why will not affect Qinglong, Chao, Shenzhen, and road section so on? Because no connection to Lantau anyway. Can Mr. Shan answer this? So you can answer on the other section. Why couldn't you able to answer the Qingma Bridge? The other trunk roads impact where the sensitivity is not as high. Thus, we're able to provide some preliminary data. So the most sensitive you choose to ignore and choose to project the less sensitive ones. How brilliant! However, you need to have a thorough investigation at the FS. Mr. Chan had answered that if we have this Route 11, by then the Qingma Lantau Bridge will be close to capacity. Ms. Poon, for this feasibility study, we hope to identify the problem as raised by members and the scope. Once we have the preliminary results, we will consult the stakeholders and let's go. Mr. Wu Chi-wei, 3 minutes, second round. For this feasibility study, I think that you have made up your mind on the alignment and of the. You want to consider of all the developments in the pipeline. For this reclamation in Sunny Bay, which just to make Sunny Bay as your connection, would it be more effective? And for the cross harbor section bridge, and sharing the bridge for rail and cars, asking that to be dealt with in the FS. As we all know that if we study it separately, then each project itself will to go through the very controversial environmental impact assessment. It's obvious that it will comes up, and yet you tell me that you plan to deal with it separately. How should we go with this? And Mr. Chung of Highways or the administration representatives claim they have to wait till the findings of the 2030 plus and dealt with them together. And once you have set the tone, what sort of maneuvering room do you have to change the scope when discussing with the contractors and the consultants? Since this is a study, do you have to come with a finalize anything? Shouldn't you include all the anticipated scenarios into your FS so that we could have a better grasp that when you come to apply for the actual funding for the project, we don't have to go back there. Why didn't you do this? Why haven't you done that? This is the problem. So for the other, with all these factors included in the feasibility study, Mr. Chung, Director of Highways, and Mr. Wu, as regards to reviews in the feasibility study, we can include that the technical feasibility of having a rail use for the cross-harbor link, and after we complete the FS, if we found it is necessary to have a rail link connecting to the Lantau, we can include this in taking for this project. What about the Sunny Bay reclamation? So after reclamation, whatever development you had in mind, and all the traffic will go to the North Lantau Highway. This feasibility will consider the alignment for the Sunny Bay reclamation. Is for something that will happen in the future. When studying the alignment, we'll take into account such information. Next, Alvin Yang, 4 minutes. Said, after Mr. Alvin Yang, we shall conclude the meeting today. Just now, and I heard the administration response that the Lantau Link and the Qingmao Bridge will be reaching capacity. I would like to confirm that which period of the day that if suppose this Route 11 to go forward, that when will it reach capacity? Just to give us an idea. I'm talking about something happened in 2036 or in the morning to the urban areas. Trevor, if this is an estimate, what sort of data is this projection based on? As Jeremy Tan pointed out, that the other sections, for example, Qinglong Tao, Samcheng, Tingkao section, we already have been provided such projections. As for Qingmao Bridge or Lantau Link, we don't have such projections or data. When the TD representatives claim that by 2036 it will reach saturation, so what sort of data is this projection or prediction based on, Mr. Chan? And for the actual alignment of the portals and the connections, we don't have any idea yet. So our estimate is probably will not be accurate. And for the Lantau Qingmao Bridge capacity, and for the connection of the portals to the Route 11 is very sensitive. So as the projections is simply not accurate at any point if it is made. I don't understand the logic. I understand that on one hand, the TD thinks that these numbers are too abstract as the Route 11 is under FS. And at the same time, projected that by 2036 the relevant route sections will be saturated. Of course, it should be based on some deduction on facts. So on your basis, we contain figures. So is it not in a position to disclose to members? Can you disclose such preliminary data? I think the TD colleague's explanation is that because there's still a lot of possibilities for the portals and the alignment. So therefore, the accuracy of these figures, that even the TD itself is doubtful. If we have disclosed these figures, might pose a challenge. I hope that through this feasibility study, we will look closely at under different alignment proposals, the Lantau and other road section and so on. How would they perform under different scenarios? If the data obtaining is unsatisfactory, what can the government do to improve it? This is the whole intention of this FS. So the Route 11 should finish in Lantau, unless you're claiming that ends at Mount Shan instead. And now that Lantau's only have this one road Lantau link, of course we have a direct impact to Lantau link, and based on the traffic volume and then point of capacity of current and projected traffic. Even if you don't have to be an expert to add 2 and 2 together. So now that you can provide the data on different road sections for Lantau and Chengmang Bridge, the TD thinks that even it couldn't trust itself. And now that the meeting will be adjourned, by the next meeting, I wonder, can you provide us with more appropriate data to help us consider this? I suggested, members suggested for the preliminary estimates, we understand as very rough estimate, and the feasibility study that found that this alignment is simply unfeasible. I don't think we should be too insistent. Even when we come up with a feasible proposal, including all sorts of portals, we only have to go through the PWSC in order to carry it out. I don't think we need to be so on this end today. Now, the next meeting will be on January 17th, on a Wednesday, on 8:30 in the morning. As for the planning proposal approved today, and it will be tabled to Finance Committee in January. And today is the last meeting of the PWSC of 2017. And here, as I wish here everyone Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.